On a distant planet called Noxara, darkness reigned. The skies were always cloudy, and the sun rarely peeked through the thick layers of gray. The inhabitants of this planet, known as the Noxari, lived deep underground in vast cities filled with glowing crystals that provided light. They were afraid of the sun. For generations, they had been taught that the bright light of the sun was dangerous and could harm them. In one of these underground cities, a young Noxari named Kale dreamed of the surface. He often gazed at the pictures on the walls of his home, showing bright flowers and warm sunlight. Unlike most of his friends who felt safe in the darkness, Kale was curious. He wanted to know what it was like to feel the sun on his skin, to experience the warmth he had heard about from the elders. One day, during a council meeting, Kale sneaked into the large chamber where the leaders discussed important matters. He hid behind a crystal pillar, listening carefully. The council members were talking about a recent event. A human ship had crash-landed near their planet. The news spread like wildfire, sparking excitement and fear among the Noxari. "The humans may be a threat," one of the council leaders shouted. "They are known for their fierce nature and bravery. We must capture one and learn more about them." Kale's heart raced as he listened. He had heard stories of humans from the elders, tales filled with both fear and fascination, but he could not understand why the Noxari feared them. What if humans were not as dangerous as everyone thought? What if they could teach the Noxari something new? As the council debated their next move, Kale's thoughts drifted to the surface. He wondered what the humans looked like and if they truly were as fierce as the elders claimed. The more he thought about it, the more he wanted to see for himself. That evening, after the meeting, Kale decided to sneak out. He climbed through the dark tunnels, carefully avoiding the patrolling guards. He felt a mix of excitement and fear as he approached the entrance to the surface. The thick door creaked open, revealing a small patch of ground bathed in a pale light. Kyle stepped out, squinting against the brightness. His heart raced as he took in the unfamiliar sights. The air felt warm on his skin, and he took a deep breath. It smelled different, fresh and alive. He had never felt anything like this before. It was both frightening and thrilling. As he looked around, he noticed strange plants reaching toward the sky, their vibrant colors contrasting sharply with the gray of his underground home. He wanted to touch them, to feel the life they held, but he remembered the warnings. He felt a twinge of fear but pushed it aside. Suddenly he heard voices in the distance. Panic rose in his chest as he realized that a search party was likely looking for the human. They would not be happy to find him out in the light. He quickly ducked behind a large rock, heart pounding. Through the cracks in the rock, he saw a group of alien soldiers marching across the surface, shields raised against the sun. Their faces were tense, and Kyle could hear them shouting orders. "We must find the human! The council wants answers!" Kale's heart sank. The Noxari were too focused on fear to see the beauty of the surface. He felt a strong urge to help the human, but how could he do that without getting caught? As the soldiers continued their search, Kale realized he needed to learn more about the humans, to understand their world before it was too late. With a final glance at the sun, he whispered to himself, "I will find a way to discover the truth about the sun and the humans. I must!" With determination, Kale quietly made his way back underground, his mind racing with plans. He knew he had to do something big to change the fear that ruled his people. Little did he know, his journey was just beginning. The surface held secrets that could change everything for the Noxari, and Kyle was determined to uncover them. The next morning, Kyle woke up with a strong sense of purpose. He could not shake the feeling that he was meant to uncover the truth about the humans. He had heard the council's plan to capture one, and he was determined to be there when it happened. He knew that the human might have answers, and perhaps together they could change the way the Noxari saw the sun. After breakfast, Kyle slipped away from his family and headed to the surface. The fear that had gripped him before was now replaced with excitement. As he stepped outside, the sunlight felt warm and welcoming against his skin. He looked around, searching for any sign of the human. In the distance, he heard voices and the sound of movement. Kale ducked behind a rock and watched as the search party, made up of Noxari soldiers, scoured the area. They were shouting commands, their voices filled with urgency. "We must find the human! The council must know what they are planning!" Kale's heart raced as he realized that the human might still be nearby. He moved cautiously, trying to stay hidden while getting closer to the group. As he crept forward, he caught a glimpse of something in the tall grass. It was a flash of bright color, something he had never seen before. Curiosity pulled him closer. He peeked through the grass and gasped. There, lying on the ground, was Alex, the human. He was unconscious, his face sun-kissed and peaceful. Kale had imagined humans as fierce warriors, but Alex looked just like any other being, vulnerable and in need of help. The search party was getting closer, their voices louder. Kale knew he had to act quickly. He could not let them find Alex. Gathering all his courage, he rushed out from behind the grass. "Stop! Don't hurt him!" he shouted, surprising himself with the strength of his voice. The soldiers turned to look at him, their eyes wide with shock. "Kale! What are you doing out here?" one of them asked, clearly annoyed. "I'm protecting the human," Kale replied firmly. "He needs our help, not our fear." The soldiers exchanged glances, confused. They had been taught to see humans as threats, not victims. "You must step aside, Kale. The council wants to take him for questioning," another soldier said, stepping closer. "No!" Kale shouted again, feeling a rush of determination. "If we capture him, we will never learn anything. We need to understand him first." For a moment, there was silence. The soldiers hesitated, unsure of what to do. Kale's heart raced as he looked at Alex. He was still unconscious, but Kale could see the strength in him. This human might hold the key to changing everything for the Noxari. Finally, one of the soldiers nodded. "Okay, but we can't let him go. We need to bring him underground for safety." Kale felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Yes, let's help him!" Together, they carefully lifted Alex and carried him away from the sunlight. Kale led the way, his heart filled with hope. As they entered the dark tunnels, Kale couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. He was bringing a human into his world, a world that had long been filled with fear and shadows. When they reached the underground city, Kale guided the soldiers to a safe room. They laid Alex on a soft bed made of glowing crystals. Kale watched as the sunlight faded from Alex's face, replaced by the soft glow of the crystals. "He'll be okay," Kale said, reassuring himself as much as the soldiers. "We just need to give him time." Hours passed, and Kale stayed close by, eager to learn more about the human. Finally, Alex began to stir. His eyes fluttered open, and he looked around, confused. When he saw Kyle, he sat up abruptly, fear flashing across his face. "Easy!" "You're safe here," Kale said quickly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm Kale. We saved you from the soldiers. They were going to capture you, but I wouldn't let them." Alex blinked, taking in his surroundings. "Where am I? Who are you?" he asked, his voice hoarse but filled with curiosity. Kale felt a thrill of excitement. "You're in Noxara, the land of the Noxari. We are afraid of the sun, but I want to understand you. I believe you can help us." Alex's eyes widened, and Kale could see the surprise on his face. The adventure was just beginning, and together they would learn to overcome the fear that had kept the Noxari hidden for so long. As the days passed, Alex slowly adjusted to life in Noxara. Kyle was always by his side, eager to learn about the human world and, more importantly, about sunlight. The underground city was fascinating to Alex, with its glowing crystals and tunnels, but he longed for the sun. He could feel the warmth in his bones, and he wanted to share that joy with the Noxari. One afternoon, Kyle and Alex sat in a small room filled with soft light from the crystals. Kale looked at Alex with excitement. "Can you really teach us about sunlight?" he asked. "I want to understand why you don't fear it." Alex smiled, happy to have a friend who wanted to learn. "Of course! The sun is not something to be afraid of. It gives life to plants and warmth to the world. It helps us grow and feel alive." Kale listened intently, his bright eyes shining with curiosity. "But what if it burns us? What if it hurts?" Alex shook his head. "It can be too hot if you stay in it for too long, but we have ways to enjoy it safely. We wear light clothing, use sunscreen, and take breaks in the shade." Kale thought for a moment. "What is sunscreen?" "It's a cream that protects our skin from the sun's rays. It keeps us safe while we enjoy the light," Alex explained. Kale's excitement grew. "Can we try it? Can we go to the surface and feel the sun together?" "Absolutely," Alex replied, his smile widening. "But we need to be careful. We should prepare ourselves first." Kale quickly gathered some supplies. He found some fabric to cover their bodies and brought a few small crystals to use as a barrier against the sun's brightness. He was determined to make their first sunbathing experience safe and enjoyable. The following day, they made their way to the surface. Kale was nervous but excited. Alex could feel the energy in the air as they approached the entrance. The moment Kale stepped outside, the sunlight hit him like a warm blanket. He squinted and looked up, his heart pounding with joy and fear. "Remember, take it slow," Alex advised, stepping into the light beside him. "Start by standing in the sun for a few moments, then we can take breaks." Kyle nodded, trying to push away his fears. As they stood together, Kale felt the warmth of the sun on his skin. It was nothing like he had imagined. It felt good, almost magical. He took a deep breath, inhaling the fresh air filled with scents he had never experienced before. After a few minutes, they stepped back into the shade of a nearby rock. Kale grinned. "That was amazing! I didn't think I would feel this way." Alex chuckled. "I told you. It's all about taking your time and enjoying it. We can do more." Kale felt a new sense of freedom. As the sun warmed his skin, he realized that fear had kept him hidden for too long. He wanted to share this feeling with the other Noxari. "We should tell everyone about this!" "They need to experience the sun." Alex nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, but we have to be careful. We can't just force them to come. They need to want to learn." They spent the next few days returning to the surface, each time staying a little longer in the sunlight. They experimented with Alex's tips, applying the sunscreen and using the fabric as protection. Kale began to understand that the sun was not their enemy, but a source of life and joy. One afternoon, while resting in the shade, Kale had an idea. "What if we hold a sunbathing festival? We can invite everyone and show them how wonderful the sun is." Alex's eyes lit up. "That's a brilliant idea. We can prepare some fun activities, teach them how to enjoy the sun safely, and share our experiences." Kale jumped up with excitement. "Yes, we can decorate the surface with lights and plants. We'll make it beautiful." They spent the next few days planning the festival. Kale shared his ideas with his friends and family who were confused but curious. Some laughed at the thought of enjoying the sun, while others listened with interest. Finally, the day of the festival arrived. Kale stood at the entrance to the surface, heart racing with excitement. He looked at Alex, who smiled back with encouragement. This was their moment to show the Noxari that the sun was not something to fear, but something to embrace. As more Noxari gathered, Kale felt a mixture of nerves and hope. He wanted them to feel the same joy he had found. With Alex by his side, he was ready to change the way his people saw the sun forever. The sun was shining brightly on the day of the festival. Kyle stood at the entrance to the surface, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. He had invited all the Noxari to come and learn about sunlight, and today was the day they would finally experience it together. Next to him, Alex smiled, encouraging Kale with a thumbs up. As the first group of Noxari appeared, Kyle's heart raced. They looked hesitant, peering out from the darkness of the tunnels. Many had never been above ground before, and the bright light was shocking. Kale could see fear in their eyes, but he also noticed a flicker of curiosity. "Welcome! You're safe!" Kale called out, waving his arms to gather everyone's attention. "Today we are going to learn how to enjoy the sun." Some of the Noxari exchanged uncertain glances, unsure of what to do. Kale took a deep breath, remembering all the fun he and Alex had experienced in the sun. He stepped into the light, feeling the warmth embrace him like an old friend. "Come on! It's amazing!" Slowly, some of the Noxari began to step outside, following Kale's lead. They squinted as the sunlight hit their faces, some shielding their eyes with their hands. Kale could hear murmurs of surprise and fear, but he pressed on. "Remember what we talked about?" Alex encouraged, stepping beside Kale. "We have sunscreen and fabric to protect us. You will love this once you give it a chance." One brave Noxari named Tari took a step forward. "What if it burns us?" she asked, still looking skeptical. Kale smiled. "That's why we're here together. We will help each other. Just start with a little time in the sun, then we can take breaks." With some hesitation, the group began to gather around Kale and Alex. They started applying the sunscreen which Alex had explained to them. It felt strange at first, but soon they began to laugh, finding comfort in each other's company. "Let's do it together," Kale said, feeling the thrill of the moment. "On the count of 3, we step into the light." The Noxari exchanged glances, their faces full of doubt but also excitement. "Okay," they agreed hesitantly. "Ready? Kale counted down, his voice growing louder. 1, 2, 3! With a cheer, they stepped into the sunlight. The feeling was electric. Some gasped, while others giggled nervously. Kale could see smiles spreading across their faces as they began to relax. "See? It's not so bad!" Alex shouted over the laughter. "Just take a deep breath and enjoy it." As they stood together, soaking in the sun, Kale felt a rush of happiness. He looked around and saw his friends smiling, their fears slowly melting away. They were beginning to understand what he had felt all along. "Let's play a game," Kyle suggested, bouncing with energy. "How about a race to that big rock?" He pointed to a large rock a few meters away. The Noxari looked at each other, and their eyes sparkled with excitement. "Okay, let's do it!" Tari shouted, her confidence growing. They lined up at an imaginary starting line. "On your marks, get set, go!" Kale shouted, and they all took off, laughter filling the air. For the first time, they were running in the sun, feeling the warmth on their skin. The joy was infectious. As they reached the rock, Kale could hardly contain his excitement. He turned to Alex, who was beaming with pride. "I can't believe they're enjoying it!" Alex exclaimed. "This is amazing!" After the race, the group gathered back in the shade to rest. They shared stories, their laughter echoing through the air. The sun was no longer an enemy, but a source of joy. As the day went on, Kale noticed how the Noxari began to relax even more. They started to dance in the sunlight, twirling and laughing, as if the fears that had held them back for so long had vanished. Kyle felt a sense of accomplishment wash over him. They had overcome their fears together, and it was all thanks to the friendship he had formed with Alex. He knew this was just the beginning. With the sun setting on the horizon, painting the sky in beautiful colors, Kyle looked around at his friends. They were smiling and glowing with happiness. The sun had brought them together in a way he never thought possible. This was a day they would remember forever, a day of laughter, learning, and new beginnings. The first sunbathing experience was a success, and Kyle was excited for what lay ahead. Together with Alex, he knew they could help the Noxari embrace the sunlight and all the joys it brought. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting vibrant hues of orange and pink across the sky, Kyle looked around at his friends who were still buzzing with excitement from their first sunbathing experience. The festival had been a success beyond his wildest dreams. Noxari, who had once feared the light, were now laughing and enjoying the warmth on their skin. "Today was incredible," Kale exclaimed, his voice filled with joy. "I never thought we could come together like this." Alex stood beside him, beaming with pride. "You did it, Kale! You showed them the beauty of the sun. This is just the beginning." As the last rays of sunlight faded, the Noxari gathered in a circle, their faces glowing with happiness. They shared stories of their experiences, laughter ringing through the air. Kale felt a warmth in his heart, knowing that they had overcome their fears together. "Can we do this again?" Tari asked, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "I want to feel the sun again." "Of course," Kale replied, feeling a rush of excitement. "We can have regular sunbathing days? We'll make it a tradition." The others cheered, their faces lit up with joy. They were ready for a new chapter in their lives, one where the sun was no longer a source of fear, but a symbol of life and happiness. As the crowd began to disperse, Kyle turned to Alex. "Thank you for everything. I couldn't have done this without you." Alex smiled warmly. "You're the one who had the courage to make a change. I just helped a little." Kale looked back at the setting sun, feeling a sense of purpose wash over him. He knew this was only the start. He wanted to help his people embrace the sun fully, to experience everything life had to offer. In the days that followed, Kale and Alex continued to meet with the Noxari. They organized more sunbathing events and introduced games and activities to enjoy in the light. Slowly, more Noxari began to join them. Each time they gathered, the sense of community grew stronger, and so did their love for the sun. One day, Kale decided it was time to take things a step further. He gathered the elders of the Noxari to share his ideas. He wanted to build a place where everyone could enjoy the sun safely, a park filled with beautiful plants and soft areas to relax. "I want to create a place where we can learn about the sun and its gifts," Kale said passionately. "We can grow plants that thrive in sunlight and create a space for everyone to gather and celebrate." The elders listened carefully. Some were skeptical, still holding on to their fears. But what if it hurts us? One elder asked. Kale nodded, understanding their concerns. That's why we'll make it safe. We can use our knowledge of the sun to protect ourselves. We can teach everyone how to enjoy it properly. After a long discussion, the elders finally agreed. They could see the change in the younger Noxari, the joy that the sun had brought to them. If you believe this is the right path, we will support you, one elder said. Let's work together to build this new space. With their blessing, Kale and Alex set to work. They gathered a group of enthusiastic Noxari, and together they began to design the park. They planned to fill it with vibrant flowers that would bloom in the sunlight and shaded areas where everyone could relax.
As they worked, Kale felt a deep sense of fulfillment.
This was more than just a park. It was a symbol of a new beginning for the Noxari. They were breaking free from their fears and embracing a brighter future. The day finally came for the grand opening of the Sun Park. The Noxari gathered in excitement, eager to see what Kale and Alex had created. As they entered the park, their eyes widened in amazement. The area was filled with colorful flowers, soft grass, and shaded spots to relax. "This is amazing!" Tari exclaimed, running through the flowers, her laughter echoing in the air. Kale smiled, watching his friends explore. The park was not just a space. It was a celebration of life, warmth, and togetherness. As the sun rose high in the sky, the Noxari gathered in a circle, hand in hand, ready to embrace their new beginning. With Alex by his side, Kyle spoke to the group. "Today we celebrate the sun and everything it brings us. Let's promise to always support each other and cherish this gift of light." As they raised their voices in agreement, Kale knew that this was just the start of a wonderful journey. Together, they would explore the sun's beauty, and nothing would hold them back. The Noxari were no longer shadows in the dark. They were beings of light, ready to shine bright.